The dating app that killed 8 Americans. There is a number that the US government tried very hard to say quietly. 8. 8 American citizens killed in a single city, in a single country, in the final 2 months of 2023. Not over a year. Not across a continent. 2 months. 1 city. 8 men who left home alive and came back in a box. The U.S. Embassy in Bogotá released a formal statement in January 2024. They called the deaths suspicious. They used careful language. Diplomatic language. The kind of language that is designed to inform without alarming, to warn without admitting how bad things had actually become. But between the careful lines, the message was simple. Do not use dating apps in Colombia. You may not survive the date. This is the story of what happened in Medellin in the winter of 2023. It is the story of 8 men. It is the story of a city that had rebranded itself as paradise. And it is the story of one man in particular, a comedian from Minnesota who flew to Colombia to spend the holidays in a city he loved and never came home. His name was Tu Ger Xiong. He was 50 years old, and his story is the one that finally forced the world to pay attention. Medellin, the city that reinvented itself. To understand what happened in the winter of 2023, you first have to understand what Medellin had become. 20 years ago, Medellin was one of the most dangerous cities on earth. The murder capital of the world. A city strangled by cartel violence, where civilians disappeared and politicians were assassinated, and the name Pablo Escobar meant something close to God, terrifying, omnipresent, inescapable. Then, slowly, painfully, the city changed. Infrastructure was built in the hillside comunas, where the poorest families lived. Cable cars connected neighborhoods that had been cut off from the city center for decades. Libraries and schools appeared where once there had been only fear. International architects came. Technology companies came. Boutique hotels came. Coffee shops with exposed brick and pour-over menus and laptop-friendly Wi-Fi came. And tourists came. By the millions. By 2022, more than 1.4 million foreigners visited Medellin in a single year. A new record. More than a quarter of them were American. The city had become a top destination for remote workers, digital nomads, retirees on fixed incomes, who had discovered that a dollar stretched 4 times as far in Colombia as it did back home. Travel blogs called it the most innovative city in the world. Instagram made it look like a dream. YouTube channels run by expats with beaming smiles and perfect lighting told their subscribers that Medellin had changed their lives. They were not lying. Not exactly. But they were not telling the whole story either. Because while Medellin had rebuilt its skyline and polished its image, certain things had not changed at all. The inequality that had fed the original violence was still there, just quieter. The criminal networks that had fragmented after the cartels collapsed had not disappeared. They had adapted. They had noticed the tourists. They had noticed the dating apps. They had noticed that foreign men, often alone, often lonely, often carrying more cash and more accessible wealth in their phones than most Colombians earned in a year, were arriving in enormous numbers and letting their guard down almost immediately. And so they built a system. A clean, simple, brutally efficient system. A woman contacts a man on Tinder, Bumble, or Instagram. She is warm. She is beautiful. She speaks enough English to be charming. They arrange to meet. She hands him a drink. The drink contains scopolamine, a drug derived from a plant native to South America, colorless, odorless, that causes unconsciousness and blocks the formation of memory. He loses hours. He loses everything in his wallet, his phone, his apartment. In the worst cases, he loses his life. The lead prosecutor of Medellin, Yiri Milena Amado, described it in a press conference without emotion, the way officials describe things they have seen too many times. Most of the killings, she said, followed identical scripts. A tourist contacts a local woman through social media or a dating app. When they meet, he is given a spiked drink. He loses consciousness. He loses his belongings. And in some cases, he does not wake up. In the first 10 months of 2023 alone, before the winter deaths that would finally make international headlines, Medellin had already recorded 32 violent killings of foreigners, 12 Americans, 3 British nationals, a 40% increase from the previous year. By the end of the year, thefts against foreign visitors had increased by 200%. Violent deaths of foreign visitors had increased by 29%. Most of the victims were American men. And then, November came. The 8. The U.S. Embassy statement listed 8 deaths between November 1st and December 31st, 2023. 8 in 60 days. Officials were careful to say the deaths were not believed to be linked to each other. Each involved distinct circumstances, distinct victims, distinct perpetrators. But the pattern was the same. A man, a city, a phone, a woman he had never met in person, a meeting arranged, and then silence. Jeff Hewitt was found lying dead in a pool of blood in his Medellin hotel room. Friends described him online as an easygoing, kind, wry spirit. They called his death a robbery gone bad. It had not been complicated. It had not required planning or sophistication. A man who let someone in through the wrong door and paid for it with everything. Johnny Jerome was killed on his 45th birthday. He had come to Medellin to celebrate. He did not see 46. Philip Mullins died of a drug overdose, according to local media reports. Involuntary, the investigation suggested. Something put into his system without his knowledge or consent. 3 names. 3 men. 3 families that got the phone call that no family should ever have to receive. And 5 others whose names were not released publicly, whose families were left to grieve in a particular kind of quiet devastation. The kind that comes when a death is too shameful, or too confusing, or too tangled up in circumstances the family would rather not explain to neighbors and colleagues and the people at church. The U.S. Embassy statement acknowledged this too. These crimes often go unreported, they said, because victims are embarrassed, because they do not want to go through the judicial process, because the shame of how it happened, the loneliness, the romantic hope, the naivety, feels almost as unbearable as the loss itself. 8 men. And then there was To Gershong, the comedian from Minnesota. His family called him Uncle Funny. To Gershong was born in Laos in 1973. He spent 4 years of his childhood in a refugee camp in Thailand before his family was resettled in St. Paul, Minnesota, one of the largest Hmong communities in the United States. He grew up between 2 worlds, between a culture that carried centuries of history and a new country that barely knew that culture existed. He became a comedian because he understood, from a very young age, that laughter was a bridge, that stories could make people see each other. He billed himself as America's first Hmong comedian. He performed at schools and universities and community centers. He used humor to talk about race, about displacement, about what it meant to belong somewhere that had not quite decided whether it wanted you. He received a fellowship from the Bush Foundation. Former Minnesota State Senator Mi Mua called him her little brother. The Hmong community across the country knew his name and his face and the sound of his laugh. He also loved Colombia. He had been to Medellin before. He loved the energy of the city, the warmth of the people, the food, the mountains surrounding the valley like a green wall. When the holiday season came around in 2023, he decided to go back, to spend some time abroad, away from the cold Minnesota winter, in a place that had become something close to a second home. He arrived in Medellin on November 29th. For 11 days, nothing alarming happened. He was a 50-year-old man on vacation in a city he knew and loved. He visited neighborhoods. He ate well. He was alive in the way that people are alive when they are somewhere that makes them happy. On the evening of December 10th, he went out to meet someone. The details of exactly how that meeting was arranged, whether through a dating app, through social media, through a mutual contact, were debated in the aftermath. His brother A would later say that Toger did not meet the woman online. Others reported differently. What is not in dispute is what happened next. He was taken. At 7 o'clock in the evening, To Gershong called a friend in Colombia. He was frightened. He said the men holding him were demanding $2,000. 8 million Colombian pesos, for his release. He said he was being held at gunpoint. His family scrambled. They tried to arrange the money. They tried to reach Colombian authorities. They tried to do everything that people do when someone they love is in the hands of strangers who have decided his life is worth $2,000. While he was being held in an apartment in the Robledo neighborhood in the northwest of the city, a woman was seen entering his apartment elsewhere in Medellin at 4:40 in the afternoon. Police were called. By the time they arrived, she was gone. His belongings, his credit cards, his phone, his cash, his watch, were gone too. The ransom was never paid. Or perhaps it was paid and it did not matter. The details of exactly what happened in that apartment in Robledo in the final hours of December 10, 2023, are the kind of details that Colombian prosecutors gathered carefully and presented in court, and that his family has had to live with knowing. His body was found the following morning in the water of a ravine in La Corcovada, in the northwest of the city. He had more than a dozen stab wounds. He had bruising consistent with a fall of more than 60 feet. The Colombian Forensic Science Institute concluded he had died from injuries inflicted by a blunt object. He was the 27th non-migrant foreigner killed in Medellin and the surrounding area in 2023. The comedy stages and community centers and school auditoriums where he had made people laugh. They went quiet. The arrests. 4 people were eventually charged with the kidnapping and murder of Tuger Xiong. 2 men, a woman, and a minor who turned himself in to the public prosecutor's office and admitted his involvement. They denied the charges at their initial hearing. The evidence did not care about their denials. In February 2025, 14 months after his death, the 4 were convicted and sentenced to up to 29 years in a maximum security prison. His brother Xiong released a statement. "After 14 long and agonizing months," he wrote, "we wanted to share the bittersweet news that the 4 individuals responsible for the heinous crime and the tragic murder of our beloved brother have been found guilty and sentenced." Bittersweet. That was the word he chose. Because justice, when it finally comes, does not bring anyone back. It does not undo the phone call. It does not fill the chair at the table. It does not give the Hmong community back their Uncle Funny, the man who had spent his whole life building bridges between worlds, who had survived a refugee camp and a new country, and decades of being the first and the only, and who had been killed in a city he loved for $2,000. He probably would have given them willingly if they had only asked. The system they built. In the months after the deaths, Medellin's mayor acknowledged the crisis publicly. Common elements had been identified across the cases: the use of dating apps and social media, the absence of prior connections between victims and perpetrators, the non-use of firearms. This was not random violence. This was organized, methodical, almost corporate in its efficiency. Criminal groups had divided the labor carefully. The women who made the initial contact were often not the same people who carried out the robbery or the violence. They were a front, a point of contact, a warm and beautiful face that lowered a man's defenses long enough for others to step in. Some were coerced into their roles. Some were willing participants. Some were somewhere in the uncomfortable middle where poverty and desperation produce choices that comfortable people in comfortable countries find it easy to condemn. The drugs used, most commonly scopolamine, sometimes a cocktail of other sedatives, were chosen specifically because they did not just incapacitate. They erased. A man who could not remember what had happened to him could not give useful information to the police. A man who was ashamed of how it had happened often did not go to the police at all. The system was designed around shame and silence as much as it was designed around chemistry. The U.S. Embassy warning, when it finally came in January 2024, acknowledged this directly. These crimes often go unreported, they said, because victims are embarrassed or do not want to follow through with the judicial process. Think about that for a moment. Think about what it means that the machinery of violence in Medellin was calibrated not just to steal from men, but to ensure those men would be too ashamed to report what had been done to them. The design accounted for human psychology as precisely as it accounted for pharmacology. And it worked. For a long time, it worked very well. What the city said. Medellin's mayor, Federico Gutierrez, spoke to the press. He condemned the killings. He pledged resources and investigation. He was visibly frustrated by what the crimes were doing to the city's reputation, the reputation that had taken 20 years and enormous collective effort to rebuild. He was not wrong to be frustrated. The vast majority of Medellin's people had nothing to do with what happened to those 8 men. The vendors and the taxi drivers and the teachers and the architects and the families in the comunas who had watched their city transform. They were not responsible for what a small network of organized criminals had done to visitors who came trusting. But the mayor also acknowledged something that the tourism brochures had never mentioned. The inequality that had fed the original violence had not gone away. The cable cars and the libraries and the boutique hotels had not resolved the fundamental tension between the city's new face and the old structures underneath it. When you build paradise on top of poverty, without addressing the poverty, something will eventually come to collect what the transformation left behind. The criminal networks targeting tourists were not random. They were an adaptation. They had looked at the new Medellin, the one full of American men with open phones and accessible bank accounts and romantic longing and the specific vulnerability of people far from home. And they had seen opportunity as clearly as any entrepreneur. What it cost: Jeff Hewitt, Johnny Jerome, Philip Mullins, Tuger Xiong, and 4 more whose names we may never know. 8 families. 8 sets of people who woke up one morning with a brother, a father, a son, a friend, and went to bed that night beginning the long, terrible work of understanding that they would not see him again. The U.S. Embassy issued its warning. Tinder and Bumble declined to comment on the specific cases. Colombia was listed under a Level 3 travel advisory. Reconsider travel. Not Level 4. Do not travel. Level 3. Reconsider. The tourism numbers, after a brief dip, began to recover. The Instagram photos kept coming. The YouTube channels kept uploading. The digital nomads kept arriving with their laptops and their optimism, and their willingness to believe that the stories they had read online were about other men, less careful men, men who had made obvious mistakes that they themselves would never make. The city kept receiving them. The mountains stayed green. The eternal spring stayed warm. The flowers that gave Medellin its other name, the city of eternal spring, kept blooming on the hillsides as if nothing had happened at all. The lesson that costs everything to learn. Tuger Xiong's brother A said something in the days after the arrests that I keep coming back to. He said, "If they were able to do this to my brother, they can do it to someone else too." He was not pointing a finger at Colombia. He was not saying the city is evil or the people are dangerous or no one should ever go. He was saying something simpler and harder than that. He was saying, pay attention. Because the system that killed his brother is still there. It adapted once. It will adapt again. And the next man who arrives in Medellin with a phone full of dating apps and a heart full of hope, and the specific, beautiful, dangerous feeling that this city is going to give him something his life back home was missing, that man needs to know what happened in the winter of 2023. He needs to know the number. 8. 8 men. 2 months. 1 city. A system so efficient it was almost invisible until the bodies made it impossible to ignore. And he needs to know the name. Tuger Xiong. A man who survived a refugee camp and decades of being a stranger in a new country and built a whole career out of making people laugh at the distances between them. Killed for $2,000 in a city he loved. By people who had learned that love, like loneliness, like hope, like the feeling that things are finally going to be different. All of it can be used against you if someone understands how. His family set up an endowment fund in his name to fight injustice and help troubled youth. Because even in grief, the instinct was to build something, to make it mean something, to refuse to let a life full of laughter end in only silence. Remember his name. And if you are a man planning a trip to Medellin right now, if you are scrolling through photos of that green valley and thinking about downloading Tinder the moment your plane lands, remember the number 2. 8. If this story made you stop and think, Please share it with someone who is planning to travel to Colombia. The U.S. Embassy warning reached thousands of people. This story might reach the one person who needs it. And if you want to keep hearing the stories they do not tell you in the travel blogs, the real ones, the ones that cost men everything, subscribe to The Broken Nomad. Every week, a new story. Every story, a real one. Because someone needs to tell them. This note is dedicated to To Ger Xiong, 1973 to 2023. Comedian. Activist. Uncle Funny. Gone too soon, in a city that should have been kinder to him.